Hi, I'm Mayor Warren, and today we're continuing our series of interviewing directors and department leaders throughout the city of Orange Township. Today we have the finance department, and I have to my left Director Adrian Mapp. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, Mayor.
To my right, I have our CFO, Niall Clemens. How are you?
I'm doing great, and yourself?
Good. Mr. Mapp, as a director of finance, you're basically in charge of the money, but give us a breakdown of the divisions of your department and some of the responsibilities you have.
Well, thank you, Mayor. We have the Division of Tax Collection, Tax Assessment, which is responsible for the assessment of all properties across the city of Orange. And we also have responsibility for the general accounting functions for the entire city. And our responsibility is a significant one because the financial integrity of any organization is the foundation upon which success is based.
That's correct. Now, I had the tax assessor and the tax collector in recently for interviews, and one of the things I did not cover was the rate of collections for all of our revenues in the town. What is our rate of collection?
Our tax collection rate is just over 97%, and that is significant. We have improved over the last few years when we were at about 90 to 91%. Now we're over 97%, and that means that over 97% of our taxpayers are paying their taxes, and that means that we are collecting more revenues as a result of the timely payment of taxes by the property owners in the city of Orange.
Now, your office is also overseen by some state agencies as well. Is that correct?
That is correct. We must be in compliance on a number of levels, and we are overseen by the Division of Local Government Services as well as the Local Finance Board. As you know, whenever we want to issue bonds, we have to go down to the Local Finance Board to get approvals, and so we are accountable to these couple of state agencies.
The education and training required for your position, we know you have to get finance training from various state agencies. Give us your background in terms of your education and training.
Well, I am a certified public accountant. I'm also a certified municipal finance officer, as well as a qualified purchasing agent. And these are certifications that are all very important, and they speak to the training and the requirements of the state so that you're qualified to perform the functions in finance for the city of Orange.
Now, one of the things you mentioned was the qualified purchasing agent or the QPA.
Yes.
Tell us why that's important.
That is extremely important because purchasing, we do millions of dollars in purchasing on an annual basis, and we have to make sure that there is compliance with the statute of the state of New Jersey so that everything that we purchase is in accordance with the requirements of state statute. And it is important also because when we conduct audits, we are held accountable. The auditors want to know that we are doing things in accordance with the statutes. And so that's why it's important to have a qualified purchasing agent to hold everyone accountable.
Now, two things. Statutorily, by New Jersey law, the city must be audited each year
That's correct.
by an independent auditing firm. That person's not in house. That person's hired by the council, and their responsibility is to audit the finances of the city. Correct?
That is very true.
Now, in those audits, tell me what they look at, and then whether or not there's a final report.
Yes, they want to make sure that the revenues that we have projected in the budget, that those revenues are collected. They want to make sure that the internal controls are in place so as to prevent fraud and abuse. They also want to make sure that there is compliance with the purchasing laws of the state and that employees are doing things the way they ought to so that we minimize the chance of anything that could go awry in terms of our finances. So the auditors are looking at our bonds. They want to make sure we are paying bills on time and that we are doing so in compliance with state regulations.
Now, there's a number of theories in terms of economics that cities and towns spend millions of dollars in public contracts. And I often hear from entrepreneurs and others, how is it that all types of small firms can participate in the purchasing process that the cities and towns are engaged in?
Well, everyone has an opportunity to participate in the purchasing that the city does on a weekly, monthly, annual basis. And
How do I know what you're purchasing? How do I get involved in it? What kind of documentation do I need? Where's the communication about that process that goes out to entrepreneurs so they can be involved in that process?
now the state requires that if we make purchases over a certain limit, that we must bid those jobs. And so everyone, small companies, individuals, large companies have an opportunity to respond to bid specifications that we put out on a frequent basis.
And you say you put them out there. Where is it? Is it published? Is it noticed, posted?
Yes, there are a few places. They're published in the newspaper. The Star Ledger is the primary paper that we place ads in because a number of people look at the Star Ledger. We also place it on our website. We place it on the New Jersey League of Municipalities. And so we use every medium at our disposal to make sure that the public is aware of the opportunity to bid on any things that we're purchasing. Also, in terms of professionals, we also put out requests for proposals,
Those are
requests
called
for qualification,
RFPs and RFQs.
RFPs and RFQs. And these are also ways that the state hold us accountable so that the playing field is level. Everyone has a chance to respond and submit proposals so that they can be at the table and be a part of the commerce of the city of Orange.
What about the criticism that the deck is stacked against smaller minority firms, women-owned firms? How do we address those kinds of issues?
Well, that's an important point that you're making, and oftentimes the bonding requirements are such that it sort of exclude the smaller firms. And one of the ways to address that is that smaller firms that are not able to get the bonding that's required, they could become um, the major companies who contracts might be awarded to, for example, for road construction jobs, they could then subcontract to the smaller companies because they would have been covered by the bonding of the larger organizations that are able to respond and be successful in the RFP process. So subcontracting to the smaller companies, women-owned businesses is important, and there's a way to accomplish that.
If I'm a small firm and I want to be part of a larger contract that I may have to subcontract for, is there a possibility for me to send in my information and say, hey, Mr. Finance Director, can you let the larger companies know that I'm available for subcontracting?
And that's extremely important. We have to assist our small businesses and we have to put requirements in place so that the larger firms know that they have to give opportunities to the smaller companies. And so we encourage all small businesses in the city of Orange to look at the ads that we put out from time to time to procure services so that they know there's this opportunity and they could submit their interest in participating in the business to the city of Orange. We can have conversations with the major um, contractors who are the ones that are oftentimes successful in bidding on these contracts so
Okay,
that they can provide opportunities to the smaller businesses.
outstanding. So in terms of to have that conversation or to reach out, we put your city cell phone and your city emails at the correct number on the screen that they can reach out to you.
That is correct. And we are always available to answer and to communicate with our residents, and anyone can feel free to call the number on the screen, and we will answer the questions that you have and provide you with the assistance that you need.
Before I let you go, one of your major functions is the city budget.
Yes.
First of all, how much is the city budget?
The city budget is just over $81 million, and that is comprised of not only the municipal portion, but it's also the schools and the county. So there are three pieces as well as our public library. There are four pieces that make up that $81 million.
So all the money collected, you in order to make your budget work in the city of Orange Township, you must collect $81 million.
That is correct.
And that $81 million, some is given out to the school board, some is used for municipal purposes, some for the library, and some goes to the county.
That is absolutely correct. Approximately 55 or so million dollars out of that covers municipal services. Probably about 13 or so million for library services. Just about 500,000 covers library services, and the difference pertains to the county open space, as well as the regular county budget. And so that gives you a sense as to how it breaks down. And the only piece that we are responsible for, that you as the mayor is responsible for, is the municipal portion of the property tax bill.
I don't have power over what the what we dole out to the library. I don't have power what we dole out to education. I don't have power to dole out the county money either.
That's correct. You have no control over what the county assesses to the taxpaying residents of the city of Orange. There's no control over what goes into the library or to the Board of Education. And the library piece is based on a formula which is considered to be 1/3 of a mill. And that's a calculation that is mandated in the statute. So you have no control over what the county portion of our tax bill, the school portion, or the library.
Tell me about the budget process and the budget timeline that's required. You're responsible, together with the business administrator and myself, in speaking to every department
That is correct.
to find out what they need to operate their departments. You put all those numbers together, and then at some point, we appear before the city council. Explain that process.
Well, each year, um, on or about October, November, we require all departments to submit what their needs are in terms of the amount of money they need to operate their respective departments. We gather all of that information, we put it into this document known as the budget. We make a presentation to you as the mayor. You have the final say over what that budget will be, that will be introduced to the city council, so that they can then have an opportunity to go through that budget. But prior to it going to the city council, we have to meet with all of the department heads, and they have to make a case for what their request is. And we try very hard to have as lean a budget as possible so as to minimize the impact on our property.
Now, some departments actually generate money that goes into the budget. So that $81 million budget, some departments generate money that is contributed to that $81 million. Explain that process.
Well, we are part of that $81 million. There are pilots that are involved, payment in lieu of taxes. That's one of the ways that we generate revenues to minimize the impact of property taxes. We also have a number of fees, parking fees, permit fees. There are fees from the court, and all of these fees go into making or generating the revenues that are needed. In addition, we apply every year for grants. And so grants make up a sizable portion of the budget. And without those grants, we would have to pass costs on to our property owners. For example, when we are repairing roads, we oftentimes get grants from the New Jersey Department of Transportation, and that helps to maintain the infrastructure of the city of Orange while at the same time minimizing tax impact on property owners.
You introduce the budget to the council, and at some point you want them to vote. How does that legislative process work once it leaves the administration?
Once it leaves the administration, which is by way of the introduction of the budget, it then becomes the council's budget. And the council has the right to go through that budget and make whatever adjustment it deems necessary, whether it's to increase any of the lines in the budget or to reduce any of those lines so as to arrive at a budget that will best provide for the needs of the people of Orange in terms of the services that must be provided. The Department of Public Works, public safety, such as police and fire. So the council has a responsibility equal to the responsibility of the mayor when it comes to the budget.
In terms of the budget, after it's gone through the administration, the council then votes to adopt it, and then the budget is set. Now, is that on a fiscal year basis or is it on a calendar year basis?
Our budget is based on a calendar year.
That means it
That
starts
is
in January.
January through December. And we are statutorily, since we are a Faulkner form of government, statutorily the budget is due for introduction January, February. The division oftentimes changes the dates and they extend the date for introduction. And so we strive very hard to have a budget that is introduced on time, but oftentimes, because of changes that are made by the Division of Local Government Services, the date for introduction is pushed back. As well as you know, in the last 2 years, the pandemic changed so many things, and the date for introduction and for adoption were amended and pushed out by the Division of Local Government
Is
Services.
there any financial consequence or any penalty for a late adoption of the budget or a late introduction of the budget?
No, there are no penalties whatsoever. There's that misconception that we will be assessed a fine by the division if we are late, but there are no consequences financially to the city of Orange for a late introduction. We want to be as efficient as possible, and to the extent that we could gather the information and work closely in partnership with the governing body, we strive for a timely introduction and passage of the budget.
Thank you very much. I want to jump over to some of the mechanics of the finance department, and that's handled by the CFO. Niles, I want to just get right to the issue of payment of bills.
Okay.
That's the part of responsibility of your section of the office. Tell me how that happens.
So we have a bill list that's presented semi-monthly. Every council meeting, there's a bill list where we present payroll, the bills that need to be paid by the different vendors throughout the various departments. This bill list goes on as a part of the consent agenda, and the council votes on it. Once the bills are approved at the council meeting, we print the checks the next day and send out the checks to the vendors.
Now, this also on the bill list a number of times is resolutions for refunds.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what that's about.
Every refund, first mayor, has to be approved via resolution in itself.
These are refunds of tax dollars, or were they refunds?
They can be overpayments for taxes. They can be overpayments for permits or fees. There can be overpayments for, say, we had a trip scheduled and the trip was canceled. Then we have to refund those that made the payments for the trip.
And how does that refund process work?
First, every refund has to be approved via resolution in itself, and then once the once the refund is approved, then that refund will go on the bill list. And once it's approved on the bill list, we will cut the check following that.
They say a number of vendors say it's tough dealing with public bodies such as municipalities in terms of getting their money after they produce a service. So let's say I'm a vendor, which means I have a contract with the city to provide some good or service. I'm a lawyer by trade. I have municipal clients. I perform work, legal work. I send you a bill on August 1st. When can I expect to get payment?
So in municipal government, a purchase order would be performed as a contract. Once we have that purchase order in place, we're asking you to provide the products or services. So if you
Yeah,
provide,
walk me through the purchase order system.
okay,
If you put out a request for proposals for legal work
okay,
and I respond
yes,
and I get hired,
yes.
tell me what happens after that.
Then the department would put in a requisition into our system. It would go through the various approvals. Once the approvals are in place, we would generate a purchase order. We would
So the
generate,
requisition is a document that says we want to set aside this amount of money for this vendor.
absolutely, yes,
And that requisition would go to the department head of the department that's affected.
yes.
And then where?
Then to the QPA for
To the
approval.
QPA, to Mr. Mapp
Yes, sir.
for approval.
Yes, and then to our
If he
business
approve it, and then it goes to the business administrator.
correct.
And once that requisition is signed by those three people, where does it go?
It goes into the system. I would approve. I would review it, make sure everything's in place, all the attachments are there. Then I would generate the purchase order.
And the purchase order, what is that? What does that do?
The purchase order is the contract. It would entail whatever services or products are going to be provided by the vendor. Then we would print the purchase order. Mr. Mapp would sign off on it. We would supply it to the vendor so that they could perform the service or products.
So once the purchase order is generated from the town, it goes back to the vendor to be signed. They know exactly what services or goods they're providing,
Yes,
and
sir.
do they return that back to you?
Yes, sir. Once
Okay.
everything has been performed, then the department head would sign off, verifying that the vendor performed those products and services. Then it would be handed over to the finance department for payment.
Okay. How long does that process usually take? If I submitted my portion by August 1st, how long does that process take?
I would say it's usually a 2 week process. Maybe it takes a couple of days for the requisition to be rolled into a purchase order. You will receive the purchase order as a vendor. You perform the service, and then once we get it back, it would go into a bucket for our bill list.
What do you say to the small vendors who have a contract with the city and they depend on those funds to be paid pretty quickly in order to float their business?
Well, I would say that there's a statutory and regulatory process that we have to follow to make sure that we're in compliance with all of the rules and regulations placed by the state.
Do you think it's possible that as a small vendor, as we come through, that you and Mr. Mapp can conduct seminars so that they know what to expect, they know what the processes are, and know what the rules and regulations that you have to follow so they can have a better expectation and plan for their contract?
Absolutely. We would be absolutely happy to inform them about the process and, let them know what's going on so that we get in compliance and we work together to improve the city.
And to contact you, is that the number that's on the screen and your email address?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So anytime to the public, both to Mr. Mapp and to Mr. Clemens, our director and our CFO, please use those numbers if you seek business opportunities or if you have questions about the finance process. You can call those numbers or contact them on those email addresses as well. Part of our budget, a huge part of our budget that we have to pay attention to on a regular basis is payroll.
Yes, sir.
Tell me how that happens.
So in the city of Orange, our employees are paid every 2 weeks. The payroll process usually starts at the beginning of the payroll week. We will go through Prime Point. We have a EHR system that processes all of our time, overtime, straight time. By Wednesday, we're sending a transfer to our payroll company, and Friday, everyone receives a direct deposit into their account.
And do we issue paper checks at all anymore?
No, we don't do any more
And
paper
do we
checks.
issue paper pay stubs anymore?
No, everything's electronic, going green.
Now, is there a particular system that we contract with for this purpose?
Yes, Prime Point EHR, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey.
Technology has introduced itself to government in many ways, and across the city, there are various computer programs that are used to enhance and facilitate some of the functionings in departments. Can you speak to what some of those computer programs are, what they do, and how they're chosen? Because they too are vendors.
Yes, sir. So we have Prime Point, who is our payroll provider. They go through an RFQ process. We also have
RFQ means request for qualifications,
Yes, sir.
which goes out to all. It's not a bid.
No, sir. It's advertised and
It's
then
advertised in the newspaper, and it
Yes,
says if you
online.
can produce this service, please send us your resume or your qualifications.
yes, sir.
And then who chooses amongst those who submit who will be the actual vendor?
That would be up to the administration. So we would pass a resolution via the council with all of those that replied to the RFQ, and then it would be up to the administration to choose who we go with from there.
And that administrative team is usually the director of finance,
Yes.
yourself, the business administrator,
Yes.
and the attorney,
Yes, and the mayor.
and the mayor every now and then. So after the RFQ is chosen, and then we engage that particular company.
Yes, sir.
What are some of the computer programs that we use, technology-wise?
So we have Prime Point, we have Edmunds, we
What
have
does Edmunds do?
Edmunds. They are our accounting software. They help with our procurement, our purchase orders. We also have Spatial Data Logic, which helps with our permits and fees. They also help with our marriage licenses, our dog licenses. Um, we have Rec Pro, which helps with our programs for rec, collecting fines and fees. We also have Allpay for our credit card system. All of our vendors, all of our constituents can pay online for everything nowadays, so they don't have to come into City Hall.
Now, when are the RFQs submitted for those kinds of programs?
Usually at the beginning of the year, but if the contract ends in September, it'll go out in July, August.
And once again, that's on the website, that's in the newspapers. And if they call the numbers on the screen and contact you, they can also get that information sent directly to them if they make the request.
Yes, sir.
Tell me how small businesses can get involved on a technology side when you're letting all of these contracts that help facilitate municipal services.
I would say check out our website. We're always looking for ways to innovate and improve our systems and processes throughout the city. We want to work together to make sure that small business owners are involved with the owners going forward. We always want to be creative and supply new ways for our residents and for our businesses to make money and grow.
So you don't have to wait for us to put out an RFQ. Your office is open for proposals from technology providers or others if they have something that's innovative and they think that can help municipal operations.
Absolutely. Reach out, send an email. You can place a call. We're always open to new ideas and innovations.
Excellent. The CFO office has to be occupied by someone who's trained according to the state standards. Is that correct? Tell
Yes,
us
sir.
about that process.
Okay, so I am a certified municipal finance officer. I took classes at Rutgers and then I had to pass an exam. It's a rigorous curriculum. There's an accounting and a theory portion. After you pass all of the classes, you take the exam and you'll be certified.
So as a CFO, once you're trained, you then have to be hired by a municipality.
Yes, sir. So you'll be appointed via resolution. As a statutory officer, there's a 4-year appointment for the CFOs. It begins at the beginning of the year. So I was appointed in March, but it started at the beginning, going back to January. And then I have 4 years from there to serve out my appointment.
And you're one of the 4 or 5 statutory positions that are in every municipality.
Yes, sir. Every municipality has 4 statutory officers: CFO, tax collector, tax assessor, municipal clerk.
And all those are provided by New Jersey law that you must have them.
Yes, sir.
Is it a easy exam? Is it more of a rigorous process for the CFO portion?
I would say it's a rigorous process, but anything that you put your mind to, I believe you could do. Just put in that hard work and you can accomplish it.
And you have that kind of confidence because you graduated from Howard University.
HU, you know.
Um, there's something called confirming orders,
Yes, sir.
and that's part of the bill paying process.
Yes, sir.
You try to stay away from that. The auditors ding you if you don't. With confirming orders, don't we run into the problem of over expending our budget?
Yes, sir. And that's why we have the stopgap with Mr. Mappinow. We want to ensure there are no over expenditures. We want to make sure that the money is in place before we go out to contract. We go out to procure any products or services.
So if I'm a director and I engage one of these confirming orders, or if I find myself in an emergency situation and I engage one of these confirming orders, that may cause an expenditure at that point, but it doesn't get realized because you're there to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Absolutely. So Mr. Mappinow will review. We would talk to the director, whoever, engaged in this confirming order to make sure it doesn't happen again.
So if you're the backstops, so what's the big harm about the confirming orders? Because the over expenditures couldn't happen because you're there.
Yes, sir.
So what's the big deal?
Well, we want to make sure that our audit is as clean as possible. When it comes to our bonding and our credit rating, everyone's looking at our audit to see what municipal functions, how our finance department is looking. If our audit is clean, we're able to go out to bond more, pave more roads at a better interest rate.
I was going to ask you about the interest rate and bonding and audit. What's the relationship between bonding capacity, which means we can go out and get revenue, interest rates for the bonds that we have to pay, and the audit function? What is the relationship between those three?
Okay, so every year we have a municipal audit. Our audit is pretty much our report card for the city financially. All of the credit rating companies, they look at our audits on an annual basis. They give us a rating. The higher our rating, the lower our interest rates would be. So we would be able to pave more roads with a higher credit rating because we would be paying less interest to the banks.
A large part of our revenue, as we've heard from Director Mapp, is grants, grant dollars that we get, and we get millions of dollars in grants. But prior to my administration, you've seen the report where grant dollars came in, but they weren't spent and they weren't administered properly. We've corrected that, and with you as the QPA, we're on the straight and narrow with grant administration. Tell me about that process and why that's so important.
So every grant is usually approved or via resolution by the municipal council. Once it's approved, it's either entered into our temporary budget, our adopted budget, or entered into the budget via Chapter 159 resolution.
So let me just take you back. A, a department director applies for a grant,
Yes,
whatever the source of the grant is, approves our application.
yes,
And then what do we need to do from there? We have to get a resolution from the council to accept the grant.
yes, sir.
And then once the coffers come in, what happens from there?
Once the coffers come in, we'll set up the grant in our financial system. There's usually a revenue and appropriation for the grant. They always balance, okay? And then once we have that in our system, we'll make sure that whatever we're procuring complies with the grant. So we'll go through the grant, make sure we're in compliance, we're not spending. If it's a
The
grant,
grant has guidelines,
yes, every grant
and
has
your
guidelines.
job is to make sure that we spend the grant money in conformance with the guidelines that are given.
Correct.
Do you use a computer program for that? Is that a manual thing? How does that happen?
Both, we embrace technology, but we also, get into the paper and the details.
And then after the grant monies are spent, is there any after action that's required?
Absolutely. We have to hold on to all of our grant purchase orders infinity. We never get rid of them. We have to retain them forever.
Now, in your position as CFO, tell me about your reporting structure. You're appointed by the mayor and approved by the council,
Yes, sir.
and then once you're appointed, tell me about your reporting structure.
So every council meeting before our city council meeting, we have a finance committee meeting. In that committee meeting, we go over everything that deals with dollars of the city, whether it be a grant application, whether it be a contract to award for municipal electrical services, for example, or whether it be a contract for paving the roads. We have admins in place where we're able to print year to date, up to the date reports on what's been spent, what's been received. So we keep the finances pretty tight.
Very good. And once again, I've encouraged other departments. You have internship availability in your department where they can learn a vast number of municipal operations, including business and accounting. If people are interested in interning with your office, is that the number that they can contact with the email address?
Yes, that is correct. Please reach out.
And what are your internship timeframes?
They usually begin in May and they go through September. But we actually have some people that come in December when they're on break from school. So we welcome interns all year round. We could always use some hands in the office.
Opportunities are available in the finance office. If you're interested in an internship opportunity, please reach out to the numbers on the screen and send your resumes to the email addresses. Director Mapp, I want to close with you in terms of the amount of staff and some of the staff duties in your office.
Well, it is important that we have an appropriate level of staffing in order to perform the functions, and separation of duties for the purpose of accountability and controls are important. And so in our general finance office, we have 4 people that perform all of the functions, and that does not include the tax assessor or the tax collectors department. There are a number of people in those areas as well, but having the appropriate level of staffing is so critically important because, as I stated earlier, the financial integrity of the city of Orange is extremely important, and that is what determines how well we are conducting the business of the residents of the city of Orange. So we strive to have competent staffing that could perform the duties in an effective and efficient manner.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen, for all that you do for the city of Orange Township. It was a pleasure. That was the Finance Department Director Adrian Mapp and CFO Niall Clemens coming to you to give you information about the financial functioning of the city. If there are any questions, please call on the screen. Of course, my number 862-373-0025 is on the screen as well. Contact us about opportunities, contact us about for information, certainly internship opportunities, and any questions you might have regarding finance. Contact us immediately, and we are there to answer your questions and to serve. I'm Mayor Warren, and this is another report from the city of Orange Township.